I wanted to be sitting in my rocking chair as an old man, knowing regardless if I ever got back or not, I did everything in my power to try and make it happen. And if it doesn't work, then I have nothing to be ashamed of because I did the best I could.
Welcome to Mindset Lessons from the Field. I'm Gina Cazazzo, the author of the upcoming memoir, Training with a SEAL. Today's guest is a definition of grit. He's a Green Beret, Silver Star recipient, and the author of Tip of the Spear, a harrowing, heroic journey of stepping on an IED, nearly losing his life, and defying all odds to return to combat with Special Forces. Now he is the owner and founder of the nonprofit Tip of the Spear, a landmine removal nonprofit where they remove landmines in the Ukraine. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ryan Hendrickson. Ryan, thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you having me. It's awesome.
I'm really excited. There's a lot out there on you, and you have this book as well. So I want to kind of dive in to more surface questions that are going to dig deep for our listeners on mindset and stuff like that. So
Mhm.
let's get into these deeper questions where let's talk about the IED blast. You were laying on your back and you were like having these moments where you were like, I'm going to die here, but I'm going to die as a boy, not a man. What changed in you from that point on? And what does becoming a man mean to you now?
September 12th, 2010, when I stepped on the IED, we were conducting a clearance of the Chutu River Valley. It borders Aruzgan and Helmand Province, real nasty place. And so yeah, you kind of gave it away. I stepped on an IED and everything like that. But after the explosion, what's really weird is when you're in, like, when I stepped on it, all I heard was a pop. But later on, I found out from my friends, months later when I was talking to guys, they were like, "Oh man, it rocked the valley." For me, it just sounded like a pop. And then I was laying on my back, and I remember the first thing that I was thinking about is I can't breathe. The reason for that was all the dust and the ammonia in the homemade explosives. Just I was like, I didn't know what happened at first, but I was thinking, I was like, I can't breathe and I can't get up. I don't know what's going on. And it didn't hurt yet. And as we're talking, it's minutes, but this is happening in seconds on the ground. And so I'm laying there and it's all right. I need to control my breathing. I need to figure out what happened. And as the dust starts to clear a little bit, I look down at my right leg and my boot is pointed at a 90-degree angle to my leg. And I was sitting there thinking, you can't prepare yourself for trauma like that. Like, there's no training. It's like, all right, when I step on a landmine, this is how I'm going to act. It's not, I mean, I know the listeners are going to be like, well, no kidding, but it's not natural. I'm sitting there and I was like, what is going on with my boot? Like, this doesn't make any sense. And so I grabbed behind my right knee and I lifted my leg up and my boot had flopped over and it was kind of like the heel of my boot hit me in the hamstring. And I saw these two pearly white objects sticking out of my pant leg. And again, there's no amount of training for trauma like that. And so I remember thinking, I was like, huh, wonder what that is. Once I realized that was my tib and my fib sticking out of my pant leg because it was just glowing. This is about 3:30 in the morning. We had actually kicked off the mission September 11th, but this was about 3:30 in the morning, September 12th. It's just these two pearly white objects were just glowing, sticking out of my pant leg. And when I realized it was my tib and my fib, then the pain just crushed me. And so I remember also thinking like, well, what do I say? I was like, I guess I'm hit. So I was like, I'm hit, I'm hit, I'm hit. My team, the closest team member to me was 20 meters away. And that's quite a distance. especially when they have to clear up to you, because your teammates can't come running up to you. Where there's one IED, there's two, or there's 10, or there's five. The Taliban were really good at playing off of our compassion for human life and what we'll do to save a fellow brother or sister in arms. And so they'll put IEDs everywhere because they know there's a chance people are going to run down to save their friend, and then they're going to hit one, and that person's going to hit one. Now you have a mass casualty. I start to try and put on my tourniquet, but kind of going in and out of shock a little bit, I think. At least that's what I think it was. We were prepared for 3 days on foot, or 3 days dismounted, before our first aerial resupply was going to be dropped to us. My pockets were full of probably like candy, most likely. I couldn't get the tourniquet tight because I didn't take everything out of my pockets. And then all of a sudden, I just remember I kept looking down. And as I would look down and I would see more and more blood, I just kind of just laid back because I had a assault pack on. So you know how you're kind of sitting up a little bit because the assault pack. And I just remember I kept looking back over my shoulder at my team, and it was like organized chaos. You can hear guys yelling and orders being given, and people are trying to start to get guys to clear up to me. But as I started to fade out, it just seemed like everybody kept getting further and further away. And then all of the voices and the commotion was like it was being yelled down a tunnel. And then that tunnel and the voices kept getting further and further away. Well, about that same time, Taliban had kicked off an ambush. And so our overwatch positions across the river opened up on them. We have 50 cals and miniguns, and then you have air support. And it's just, it's four something in the morning, or three something in the morning. And it's just this chaotic scene that's unfolding around me. And I remember laying my head back, and I thought, nobody can get to me, because not only, I'm in an area that's heavily IED'd, now we're in a fight. And I thought, yeah, I'm going to die here today. That old saying, there's no atheists in foxholes. I don't really think there is. I'm a Christian, but I just remember God and I started having a lot of conversations, and I was reflecting back on my life and how I had lived my life. And I remember feeling ashamed of myself because I was going to die here that day, never being a man. Yeah, I was a Green Beret, but I was always this little boy that's this victimized mindset, this entitled, I'm owed something for something, and, victimized because you don't get what, you think you deserve, and just all this other stuff. I had left a path of destruction, a tornado wide path of destruction in my life, just being a little boy. I was going to die there that day, knowing that I lived a horrible life up to that point. And so I was asking for forgiveness, and I was, really doing a lot of thinking, and just like, how did I let life come to this? I'm not proud of who I was. I started to fade out, and then there was a period of time I don't remember, because I just wanted to go to sleep real quick, just take a quick nap. And then I get this slap across the face, and one of my teammates had made it to me. They're starting to, cut my pants so they can get the tourniquet on and everything like that. I just remember, like, as my team was surrounding me, but also setting up security because of the situation. Well, it's like a rolling security. Security was already set up, but they're moving with it. As all this is happening, I remember, the pain was so excruciating, and I was just asking God, please, do something to just ease everything. They'd given me a fentanyl lollipop. I chewed it up. They hit me with morphine. I broke out in hives everywhere. So I found out I'm allergic to morphine. So that's good to know. Again, I remember looking up in the sky, and at this time it's getting light outside. It's kind of that time when you're like, do I need night vision? Don't I? But I remember looking up in the sky, and as everything was unfolding around me, and the chaos of the Taliban trying to close the distance with us, because if I can close the distance with you, you can't drop bombs on me, right? Or else you're going to hit your people. Just through all this, there was this eagle circling me. And I remember looking up and seeing this eagle through everything. It just kept circling me. And that's when I was like, all right, I'm good. I'm going to be okay. But the realization, that real end of life realization that I was not happy with the life that I had lived. Yeah, no, that was really, really profound. And that's what started me on my journey to today, basically.
Here's my question for you, because you said a lot in there, but like you're laying down, you're about to die, and you're asking God for this second chance because you, according to one of the interviews, like you were like a monster and you really wanted this second chance to like be better, right? But then you get it, right? And you're laying down in the hospital bed alive, right? You're going through like 27 surgeries, like all this stuff is happening, right? But you're spiraling, like you're in this dark, dark place, right? And it wasn't
Hmm.
until your dad told, like, had who was your caretaker at the time, like saying, like, we have to have this conversation
Hmm.
because you're about to go down a path that you're never going to be able to come back from. So my question is, how do you go um at some point did you like from I want a second chance to I got a second chance, but I'm again wasting it in a way of I'm becoming a
Hmm.
victim? Does that make sense?
It does. So actually, I did not care if I had a second chance, because I felt like I deserved the outcome that was coming. When I got the second chance is when I realized like God has a plan for me. But no, I felt like I deserved what was coming my way. And that's a really, really bad way to die. If you're going to feeling that you deserve it. And yeah, I did. I felt like, yeah, I got this coming. Karma, you know what they say. But in the hospital, there's yeah, I really, really started to get sucked in to this self-induced entitlement, victimized mindset. And the entitlement was, you don't know what I've been through. Look at what I've done for our country, and just go down that rabbit hole. And this entitlement, look at our country today, especially our youth. Entitlement is an impossible void to fill. You can't fill it. And so when entitlement doesn't get filled, it turns into victimization. Well, I deserve this. How come I'm not getting this? Poor me. And then life goes down from there. And I really do feel in America like it's so easy to be a victim. It's kind of celebrated, to tell you the truth. But for me, personally, as I'm heading down this really destructive, self-induced path I was on, my dad, had this conversation with me and he said, "Hey, the path you're going down right now, I know it. And I'm going to, we need to have a talk." And he said, "The way I see it, right now you have two choices in life. You're at a crossroads." He said the first choice is you can continue to head down the path you're on right now. You can continue to be the victim. You can continue this self entitlement that you have with what you think that you deserve. And this is what's going to happen. Number one, you're going to start to push everybody away from you because you're not going to get the self satisfaction that you think you deserve or your entitlement is telling you deserve, because it's impossible to feel. So when you're not getting this, you're going to start to push people away. And then you're going to turn into a victim of your own injury. You're going to be victimized by your injury. You will never leave September 12th, 2010. And once you become a victim, and that entitlement void of what you think you deserve because of what you think you sacrificed, he said you're going to turn to a substance, or you are going to turn to some reckless behavior to try and fulfill what you think you deserve or what you need, or to numb pain that you're going through, because this path only equals pain. And then there's going to come a point when nothing's going to work for you anymore. And he said, "Son, you're going to be one of the 22 a day." And he said, "This is how it works. This is what's going to happen." Or you can use this situation, you can use this pain, you can use this darkness that you're going through right now to make yourself stronger, but don't do it for yourself. Make yourself stronger to help other people. And he said, if you use this experience, as bad as it seems right now, if you use this experience to make yourself stronger so you could benefit and help other people grow, iron sharpens iron, right? And if you can do that, then you are going to be fulfilled and you are going to be on the right path to happiness. He said, it's a hard path. It is really hard and it's full of letdowns, but that's life, son. And he said, let me give you a little bit of advice. He said, this is life, and life, it can be ugly and it can be cruel. He said, but you are not the most important person in the room and nobody owes you shit. It's just the way it is. So you need to get over yourself. You need to quit thinking that everybody owes you something. You need to man up, become the man that you wanted to be when you were laying there along the Helmand River. You need to man up. You need to take responsibility and you need to use this experience. You have a second chance at life. I expired twice on when I got to the role facility, the role 3, and you have the golden button. You are gifted a second chance at life. He said, don't waste it being a victim. Don't waste it being an entitled little boy. And so that's really what, kind of spoke to me right there. And no, I didn't jump up out of bed and like, oh, I'm changed. And, the pastor shakes your head and he's like, you're forgiven and everything's great. This is life. I get pounded down all the time. I feel sorry for myself lots because it's easy. But that moral compass, that north-seeking arrow, I can always get back on path, and it's because of that conversation my dad and I had, when I was in the hospital, really going through some dark, dark times.
So I also want to be clear, like within the audit, like our listeners, and also for myself. Um, was this also while you were having your survivor's guilt as well? It's kind of like everything all at once. It was like the injury that you're coming back from, and then also the survivor's guilt of learning about what happened to your teammates. So after we're going back after the people that, you know, essentially blew you up, your leg
Mhm.
up. So is that, are we in the right time frame right now?
Yeah, I mean, when I found out Calvin died, yeah, I was in the hospital, and it all just kind of compounded on top of each other. I was already, at Brooks Army Medical Center because a couple other guys in our company were injured. Both of them lost legs and they were there. And so I wanted to go and be with guys that were in our company as well. And it was all in the same valley, just a nasty, nasty place. But when Calvin died, yeah, I mean, that was really hard, especially, for our last conversation that we had when I was at the roll facility and I wake up to this note that's stuck on like the hedge board of the bed, or I think that's what they call it, a hedge board or bed frame thing, whatever. But it said it was just a Post-it note, and it said, "If you're reading this, you're alive." I was like, "If I'm reading this, I'm alive. What are you talking about?" I didn't because obviously, I'm not awake through the whole surgery watching them, kinda, coaching them or anything like that. So, but I read that. Calvin was there at the hospital for me, and what was crazy is, I was the new guy in the company. Calvin was, extremely a senior guy. I felt so alone when I got to the role facility and I woke up from my first surgery, or maybe it was the third surgery, I don't remember, but I felt so alone and I felt defeated. I kept hearing the Taliban, we could intercept their communications because they just use FM freaks. And so, we can listen in on a ICOM channel, and they were celebrating and laughing and cheering about me, because, they had eyes on. I just felt, alone. And then he shows up and the conversation we had and the words that he said to me. And then when I found out he died, I mean, it hit me really hard. But another, another old man conversation, my beliefs as a Christian, I believe that when you're born and when you die, that's not up to you. That's up to God. God knows, well in advance, when you're born, and also when you're going to die. So it's kind of like a book. The beginning and the end chapter has already been written. It's not up to you, that's up to God. But those middle chapters, those middle pages, they're all blank. And what are you going to do? How are you going to write those pages and fill in those chapters of your life? That's what's up to you. And Calvin's book of life, what he did and how he helped people, he did it right, and he helped a lot of people. And so looking at it that way, if you can't control death, I mean, you can't. It's not up to you. And also it's war. People die in war. You can't pick and choose who's going to die, if you're close to them or not, or if it's fair or if it's not fair. We've had plenty of brothers that have been killed, and it's like, how? How this man, his wife, kids, and how is this possible? It just is. It's war. Looking at it like that and understanding that, life is short. Those middle chapters are up to you. And how's your book going to read in the end? And that's kind of how I live my life, to tell you the truth. I want my book to read, well, I have a book, but I want the book of my life to read, that I helped people. And, like Calvin.
I I love everything that you said there, and I want to ask you. You said something that resonates so well, and it's that the victim mode is very easy. It's very easy to live in the victim mode, to sit in that victim mode, and it's really really hard to move into that victor mode. It's really harder when you're like in a lot of pain, when you don't know what your future looks like, and it's completely out of your control right now in this moment of you being in the hospital, because you're waiting to figure out what's going on with your leg, right? and
Mhm.
and and you're about to go, and you decide to take a risk. If you were given what, 10 to 15% uh, chance of you getting your leg healed instead of it being taken off, right?
Mhm.
So becoming an amputee, and you decide to go for it, right? And then you're in this hospital, and you're seeing if this even works, right? And you're getting a bunch of people around you, except for two people, the doctor and I forget who the other person was, saying to you that you have a chance of getting back, and everyone else is like, give it up, and obvious, and you're setting yourself up for failure and things like that. And it's so easy to buy into all that, right? And it's so easy to fall into the whole like my fault of all of this, and how this all happened, and the victim mode and stuff like that. And not every single day is a good day, right? Whereas some days you're feeling good and other days you're low, right? How do you step into that victor mode and choose to be in that victor mode on a daily when times are really hard? Like, are you
Mhm.
recognizing, like, hey, I'm in this victim mode? And what do you particularly do? What works for you that gets you out of gets into victor mode? Because, like some days are just bad days. What do you do?
So I got a story for you. There's two old men sitting on their porch, and they're waiting to die. They've lived their entire life, and now all they can do is look back on the life that they lived, and they're just waiting on death. Time keeps ticking on. You can't stop time. The first old man, he's miserable. He's done nothing with his life. He let life pass him by. He never took any chances. He never risked anything. He never did anything he could fail at, because failure, he didn't ever want to fail. And so he lived in this comfort zone to where he did nothing with his life. Outsider looking in is like, man, this guy's done it all. He has money, he's nice house, family. But when it's between him and himself and his memories, he's miserable because he's done nothing with his life. He never, ever stepped out of his comfort zone, because he just lived the life that he lived, and he let life live him. So he was miserable, full of regrets, full of I wish I would have's, and he can't now because he's waiting on death. Then there's the second old man. The second old man, he's happy, he's fulfilled, he's done everything there is to do. He has lived his life to the best that he possibly could. He's failed multiple times. He's succeeded some. He's taken chances. He's risked everything. He's done it all. And now he's sitting back in his chair, probably drinking a beer, and he's just happy, fulfilled, content because he lived the best life and he lived life to the max that he could for himself. When I look at that story, again, from my dad, and I look at my life, the question is, which old man or old woman do you want to be? Because everyone's going to get to that point in life where you have no choice but to reflect back. You can't stop that. Everybody will have self-reflection at some time in their life. Are you going to look back and are you going to be ashamed how you lived life? Or me with my injury? My dad said, "Are you going to look back and be ashamed how you handled this situation, how you handled this injury? Or are you going to be fulfilled, content, happy because you know you did it the best you could? You owned it. You took control. You took responsibility. You took risks. You took chances. Becoming a Green Beret in 18 Charlie, clearing IEDs. Guess what? There's a chance there you may step on one. But I can sit back, as an old man, and I know that, yeah, I've gone through some pain in life. Everybody has. But I did it. I've done everything. Failed. Man, I can't count how many times I failed, but I succeeded some. And those successes have set me up for what I do today. And those failures, they're not actually failures because of their lessons. And they're lessons to make me stronger so I can help other people. They used to be failures. Yeah, when I was a victim, oh yeah, they were all failures. Now they're lessons. And they're lessons to make you stronger so you can help other people. But when I look at that and I think, which old man do I want to be? That kind of snaps me out. Again, I'll go. Man, I'm the best at feeling sorry for myself. Oh, it's so great. But in the end, you get nowhere. You're wasting time. So those pages that you could be filling in your book, you're wasting them with nothing. And life is short. All of us have lost friends that you just like, how's this possible? Life is short. You don't know. God knows, but you don't know when that last chapter is coming. And so instead of feeling sorry for myself and taking the easy route of being a victim, it's just like, hey man, got to keep moving on because I am getting nowhere right now. So let's get back on path. That north seeking arrow. Let's get back. Let's get back on path and let's start living life again. So that's kind of, you know, I guess my thing.
Yeah, no, I think we all need something or some feeling like to pull. I would set a timer for myself. I was working at a restaurant that I just hated being at, and I'm like, Gina, it's the end to the means. But I was like in this victim, and I said, listen, you got 2 minutes. And I did the same thing when I lost my hearing. I went completely deaf in my left ear. And it was a Friday when I said to myself, I think I like lost it like Thursday. And by Friday, I said, you have the weekend, 2 days. You got cry, pity party. Before the restaurant, I gave myself 2 minutes. I don't know why two seems to be a theme in my life, but I'd give myself 2 minutes before I'd walk into the restaurant and I'd cry the moment the timer went off. I'd walk into the restaurant, I'd high five everybody, and I'd be like cheering everybody on. And like nobody had any idea that 2 minutes ago I was crying, right? Because I was there. And it was the same thing with my hearing. It was like I gave myself a weekend, and on Monday we're done with the pity party, and
Hmm.
we're in mindset of let's let's try and get this back. Let's see what we can do, right?
Yep.
So I understand, like it's like what works for you, and that story is obviously the story that you pull from every single time you go down, because like you said in many of your interviews, it's like, yeah, then I got back into combat, and yeah, I did this, but then this happened, and then this happened, and this happened. It was like not we have these up and downhill moments, or like life challenges us in so many different ways, and it's like you can easily fall back into that victimhood mindset. It's like, well, I just came back from this and now I have to go through this again and I have to get through this again, and it's like, well, that's just life.
Yep.
And also I feel like when you're when you are going through this again, you're going through that again. To me, you're living a fulfilled, challenging life because you
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't be going through that if you're living in the comfortable and the safe. And not many people get to go do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to stay in the hospital for one more second as we talk about your childhood where you were sexually abused as a child from 6 to 7, I think it was, for in those, and you said you didn't say anything until you were in the hospital and you broke that silence. And I want to know, a, what made you break that silence, and looking back, what would you say to your younger, that 6-year-old you, that felt like you just, like you had like no escape. Like that was just like
Mm-hmm.
you were just, you deserved it, whatever you want to call
Being in the hospital and being there with my dad, such an inspiration to me. And all the narcotics that you're on, it's kind of like truth serum. And for me, what had happened at the hands of a stepmother was something that I had buried, but I had allowed it to turn me into that little boy that I was talking about, where I felt, all females deserve to hurt like I did. And I lived my life like that, just creating just such destruction. And I would use my experiences, as a child with this stepmom as the excuse of why, it's okay for me to do this to relationships that I had, two failed marriages, just an absolute monster. But I blessed off on it because it's like, well, this happened to me, so it's okay for me to be an asshole and just a really, really bad person. And then I got the wake up call September 12th. Coming out and telling my dad about it actually wasn't that hard because of all the medication I was on. I look back now and I don't really know why I decided that, I wanted to talk to my dad about it, because he didn't know. He had no idea this stepmom figure had me believing like this is what big boys do. This is normal. You just I just never talked about it. Maybe it was the shame of it, or I'm not sure. But as far as, coming out and telling my dad, I actually don't really know why I did, but I know I could see the hurt in his eyes, because he wasn't able to protect me during those times, when I was vulnerable child, because my dad would leave on logging trips. He'd be gone for a week at a time or something like that when he was logging, thinking that your kids are safe, with this adult figure, and then to find out, things happen. Talking to my dad about it was one thing. The reason why I started to talk more publicly about it is because I saw the statistics. I could be wrong, but it's like 1 in 4 little girls and 1 in 6 or 1 in 8 little boys in America alone, or maybe it's even less than that. Maybe it's 1 in 3 little girls and 1 in 5 little boys. But the statistics are absolutely disgusting, and it's absolutely mind blowing, especially in America. And it's very common. You're not, it wasn't something that just happened to me. This is very common. Unfortunately, it was very common. I don't know the statistics now, but I don't even want to know, to tell you the truth. I started to get more public about it because, I had had conversations before in private with friends and stuff like that. They were like, "Yeah, that happened to me too." It's like, "What? Like, how? Are you kidding me?" Like, "No, yeah, it happened to me." And so all of a sudden, I'm seeing a way that I could, instead of what I used to make myself this victim and I'm entitled to hurt people because of a situation that happened to me as a child, now all of a sudden I can man up and I can own this. And I can use that experience to help other people. And whether it's, someone my age that has never talked about it or never dealt with it, or that parent that finds out it's been happening to their child, and how do they register everything, or that child saying something, to little Ryan when all this was going on. I don't know. I don't I I mean, what do you say? I have no idea. I mean, I can't say, suck it up, or I can't say tell somebody. I have no idea what I would have said or what I would say to myself if that was possible. Using that experience to help other people going through something that is disgustingly normal. It really helps um, me understand, but also forgive myself. I'm not God. I don't know if I have it in me to ever forgive, her, but there's a forgiveness that I need for myself, and also to take responsibility for being that little boy that thought I could destroy every female's life because I went through, situation when I was younger, and just trying to own it and make things better.
This podcast episode is brought to you by Thrivers Coffee. Podcast guest Nick McKinley's company, Deliver Fund, brings you guys Thrivers Coffee. It is ethically sourced, it's organic, and it supports traffic survivors. That is right. Thrivers Coffee is all about empowering us to making a difference in the fight to end human trafficking. That's why 100% of the proceeds go directly towards their goal of bringing freedom to victims of human trafficking. So if you guys love coffee that is organic, ethically sourced, and tastes absolutely delicious, and want to help to end the fight of human trafficking, check out Nick McKinley's company, Thrivers Coffee. I know I said we're going to move from the hospital, but I lied. Sorry. I have one more question I wanted to ask you. When I mentioned it a little bit ago when we talked about how you two people were like believed that you could go back into combat, right? Two people where like everyone else said like give this up, right? How do you hold on, and did you hold on to the belief like, yeah, I could do this, I'm gonna go back into combat, like, and like, because just sometimes we have to be realistic, right? I mean,
Mhm.
for myself, I had to be realistic that like people don't just get hearing back. Like it's just they don't go from zero to hearing. It just doesn't happen. They say. I mean, I got it, but what they say, right? But I knew that there was at one point in time where I had to just accept the fact that this may never come back, and you have to just kind of like let go of that control and be okay with it, right? For yourself, like how do you hold on to hope that you will be able to go back into combat, and how do you not set yourself up for like an epic failure of
Mhm.
that could really spiral you down, and what did you hold on to believe that you could?
So management expectation is everything in those situations, but it also goes back to the two old men. If you don't at least try, then you'll never know. And if you don't know, it's because you didn't try, and that's your own fault. When I had, the 10 to 15% chance of having a limb reattached, and then everyone's saying you're lucky to be alive, you're getting medically retired, which I did, but I came back through a waiver, a continue on active duty waiver. But there was two key figures in my life. So Johnny Owens was my physical therapist, and Joseph Shue was my orthopedic surgeon. And both of them, like, yeah, you want to go back? Let's get you back. Let's do it. It's going to be a lot of hard work, but let's do it. I just remember I kept hearing the Taliban celebrating, and their math is a little bad. It's like we killed 500 Americans when I just stepped on an IED, and it's like, well, not really. But the Taliban had bloodied me up, but they didn't beat me. And so I wanted to get back into the fight, not just for that reason, but I wanted to be back with my brothers, my ODA team. Having those two key figures, Johnny and Joe, in my life that were like, dude, you're making this more difficult than it needs to be. Let's just do it. Everybody else wanted to complicate the situation when it's just like, hey, if it's possible, we'll do it. If it's not, then we won't. And I wanted to be sitting in my rocking chair as an old man, knowing regardless if I ever got back or not, I did everything in my power to try and make it happen. And if it doesn't work, then I have nothing to be ashamed of because I did the best I could. And that's how you avoid a lot of these pitfalls when it comes to like, I'm gonna do this. Like me, I'm gonna go play in the NFL. Well, no, you suck. You're not. I was like, I'm going to put my whole life and all my goals on playing in the NFL. I mean, you're going to have a pretty bad letdown. You manage that expectation like, hey, I'm going to give it everything I got. And in the very end, if I fall short, I know I did everything in my power. I held nothing back. I left it all out there. So when I'm that old man, I'm sitting in my rocking chair, that's a victory to me because you at least tried and you got the experience. That's how I actually view situations like that. And the surgeries and the skin grafts and grew 2 inches of bone and everything happened. And next thing I know, I got blown up September 12th, 2010, and I was back in Afghanistan, Panjwai District, Kandahar Province, March of 2012.
Wow, absolutely incredible,
Mhm.
incredible story. And you now I'm going to fast forward a bit because I want to talk about. I'm assuming right before you then started your nonprofit, and you were like talking to a friend or something, and you were needing a purpose, and
Mhm.
you are, and so many people that come onto the show, and so many people in life in general, they feel like they lose an identity when they, I mean, and we lose identities like when we graduate from high school and we get into being an adult, right? And when you become a parent and you uh, retire and all these moments in your life,
Mhm.
and for you it was like military was something that you were being shaped for since you were a child. Like you
Mhm.
knew this is where you were going to go, right? So how do you rebuild from that loss of identity and to finding your purpose into where you are today and the person that you currently are?
We'll back up just a little bit. I went after my injury, which was my first deployment to Afghanistan. I went back to Afghanistan 5 more times. So 6 times as a Green Beret and 2 times as a contractor. So 8 total times. I left Afghanistan July 2021. And so not the full withdrawal, but pretty close to August 2021 when all US troops left Afghanistan. And when I got home, I remember because we were shutting down bases that I had operated at, bases that there was bloodshed at, and everything like that. And so when I got home and I actually had a chance to kind of dissect everything that just happened, my entire career revolved around Afghanistan and Iraq, and now it's done. And so you're looking back and you're seeing you're starting to ask the questions, what was it for, which is starting down that path for me at least of the entitled victim, because it's like, what was it all about? What was the bloodshed for? I almost died there. Why? What again, what was it for? Brothers that we put on helicopters for their last flights off the objective, why? What was it for? I understand why veterans go down that pit, that rabbit hole, or they start to dig that pit for themselves. And it makes sense to me. But the problem is you're trying to control something that is not up to you. It's gonna happen. Like, we're leaving. There's nothing you can do. There's no amount of, lobbying or anything like that that's gonna make what these questions, or that's gonna answer these questions that you have. What was it for? Why did these guys have to die for what? None of these questions can ever be answered. So you're trying to fight, and you're getting this entitlement of you deserve answers, and you're not going to get them, which is going to lead to victimization. I went through all this and we just did that. I really felt myself going down that, digging that self-induced, entitled, victimized pit that I've crawled out of a couple times in my life. I was sitting there just, thinking it's about January, and it's like, what am I going to do now? My entire identity was wrapped up into being a Green Beret operating in Afghanistan, or being the job I was doing as a contractor, working in Afghanistan, and all this other stuff. Is like, now what? I didn't actually have to pull myself out of that hole, because I'm sitting there watching TV February 24th, 2022, and I'm watching the full scale invasion of Ukraine unfold in front of our eyes. So the Russians, they call it a special military operation, but it was a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Was just continuing from the 2014 Donbass and Crimea conflicts. But I'm sitting there watching, and I remember having this nagging feeling that I just couldn't get rid of. And it was, I wonder if I can help. How can I help? And then I start talking myself out of it. Like, you don't like Ukraine? Really? I know nothing about Ukraine. I know it's in Eastern Europe and, but no, no, no. Come on, man. Like, no. Well, this feeling just kept nagging at me. And looking back, I know exactly what that feeling is. It's a motto we have in special forces as Green Berets. It's De oppressor libere, to free the oppressed. It's something that we're willing to fight and die for. Now I have this decision to make. Do I want to be that old man that looks back and asks, why didn't I at least try? Why didn't I just see? I mean, what's the worst that's going to happen? I'm going to get to the border and be like, this isn't worth it and go home, or get to Ukraine and things don't work out. I don't control death. So that's not my concern. Yeah. What am I going to lose by not trying? The answer to that question is a lot, because you're going to be that old man sitting in the chair wishing you would have. And those were questions with as much of the feeling that I had of how I can help. I guarantee I would be that old man sitting in my chair wishing I would have at least tried. And so middle of March 2022, I went to Ukraine. I was talking with a good friend of mine, David Cunningham. His family founded the missionary organization YWAM. And so I'm talking with him, and he said there's a campus in Kyiv. Most of the missionaries have evacuated because the Russians were, moving in that direction to Kyiv. There's this group of kids, basically like 18 to 20-year-old, and they're driving around in vans and buses, and they're evacuating women and children out of, these areas that the Russians are coming into. He said, I'm worried that they're going to get themselves killed. And then I asked the question that, would put me on the trajectory I'm on right now and change my life forever. I said, how can I help? Over a few days, we talked it out, packed a bunch of bags, got a bunch of body armor, med supplies, and headed over in the middle of March. When I got there, we did, like, first day was, hey, can you drive a stick shift? Most Americans can't. And I was like, yeah, I can. They're like, great, you're driving the bus. We just started going for, 3 months. About the April timeframe, the Russians started to conduct their withdrawal to the east. War zones are, in natural disasters. I don't like to compare the two, but there's a lot in common. Hurricane, tornado, wildfire. Once the area is safe, people come back and see what's left of their lives. See how, how do I rebuild? Well, combat's no different. As the Russians started to conduct their withdrawal to the east, civilians started to come back to see what was left, and they start hitting landmines and booby traps and stuff like that were left behind to slow down a possible Ukrainian pursuit or offensive or counterattack as they were conducting their withdrawal to the east. This is something, I'm familiar with. I've found, hundreds of IEDs and landmines in Afghanistan. So this is something I'm familiar with. Well, the Russians, they had left all this behind, all these explosive hazards and landmines, and the Ukrainians were trying to find an answer because civilians were getting tore up at this period of time. Ukrainians have something called the territory defense. It's like a neighborhood watch, but it's armed with RPGs, PKMs, and, so maybe like neighborhood watch in like Chicago or something like that. Now all of a sudden it's like you guys were armed and mobilized to defend your villages. Well, now you guys need to remove all these landmines. They were like, what? We don't have training for this. How are we gonna, what do you want us to do? And so they start to build up these territory defense sapper teams. Well, that's when, I realized I can help here. So I decided, I started training guys, and then I'd find out what we need. We need equipment. We need detectors. We need, safety equipment. So I'd go back to the States, raise money, buy all this equipment, go back and donate it, work with the teams, train them. And then we'd go out to the fields, remove mines. And then I'd get another team. All right, you guys need it. And, kind of rinse and repeat. So as I'm doing all this, I'm realizing all of a sudden I'm fulfilled and I have this passion and this drive and I have purpose. Purpose is everything. Hope and purpose are the same thing. Purpose is everything and it's contagious. And I have this sense of service again that I was missing after, the withdrawal from Afghanistan. And with all that, I just remember thinking like, if this worked for me and helping other people does this for you, I want to share this with others. And so we did. We started our NGO 501c3 tip of the spear landmine removal. And I started, veterans started coming over with me and we started helping. It's not just, well, I mean, yeah, I know it says tip of the spear landmine removal, but we do a lot of other things there. People have come over and helped out in so many different ways, not just on the minefields. When I'm looking back and I'm trying to think, like, people ask me all the time, they're like, why? Why landmines? Well, it all goes back to September 12th, 2010. So when I was laying there that day along the Helmand River and the pain I was going through and the self-reflection and then the talk my dad had with me, use this to make yourself stronger to help other people. It came full circle. And I realized that I had finally took control of my life, manned up, and I was using the situation in September 2010, and I made myself stronger. And now we're helping other people. So that's kind of how it comes full circle, I guess.
That's awesome. I love that. Yeah. I always feel that like a lot of times, like a lot of things that they come full circle. It's just it's interesting on how the story comes together.
Yeah.
For the final question on the show, what do you have for our listeners that they can do on a daily basis to strengthen their mental fitness, their grit, their resilience, so that way when everyday challenges come their way, they're armored up?
Get out of your comfort zone. Get out of your limitations. Challenge yourself. The best motivator and the best thing for a human being is to challenge yourself. Something as stupid as these cold plunges. It is. But challenge yourself. Make yourself comfortable being uncomfortable. And you're gonna grow. Don't settle with your everyday left, right, left. Going through life. Don't do that because you got one shot and you have no idea when that last chapter is going to be read. That's up to God. But you can be filling in those middle pages with everything you do. How's your story going to read? Challenge yourself. Do things, step out of your comfort zone, accept failure, use failure as lessons. Don't go through life left, right, left, because you're going to get to an age where you're going to look back and you're going to have to answer for why you never tried. That's up to you.
Thank you so much. You're absolutely incredible, and I really appreciate you coming on to my show.
Absolutely. It's amazing.
We're gonna everyone that's listening, check out his book Tip of the Spear. It's gonna be in the show notes too, where you can just click on the link to purchase it. It's available on Amazon. Also, we're gonna put a link to Ryan's organization, Tip of the Spear. If anyone wants to donate, reach out to Ryan. I think what you're doing is amazing. I love your story, and I really appreciate you coming on.
No, this has been great. I appreciate it, and I definitely appreciate the opportunity. So thank you for that.
Of course. Yeah, and everyone that's listening, like, share, comment, subscribe, become a Substack member. We have a bunch of amazing things that only our Substack members get. And I will see you guys all next Wednesday.